For someone just starting out, they want to build the next California burrito. How do they do that, especially with delivery in the mix now?
I'm not going to help them with that. I think it's very hard for somebody who's starting a restaurant to be delivery first.
You mentioned delivery, so it stuck with me. How do you think about the commissions that Zomatos and Swiggies of the world and the take rates and whatnot? Is it even sustainable anymore?
I think it's very punishing for new restaurants. I heard they charge 30% now.
It really feels like there's some gap open in the food delivery market in terms of making the restaurant side of things a bit happier.
I think that maybe Uber would have been that, but they had all that drama with their founder leaving, and so they got out maybe too early.
I think Dara recently in an interview said something like, the Indian customer, hardest to please.
Yes, I saw that as well. I was,
You mentioned you're built at heart. Have you not felt any distraction or any shiny object syndrome?
It's certainly seductive. You know, this is popular, this is interesting. There's so many things of interest. I would say that decision making gets much better when it's very focused.
Have you ever faced any corruption while scaling? Welcome to Chain Reactions, an ad hoc podcast by Atomic Growth that deeply explores the moments that triggered or started remarkable outcomes. For context on me, I run Atomic Growth alongside an exceptional team that specializes in end-to-end podcasting for some of the largest VCs and tech companies in the world, representing the likes of Acquired, South Park Commons, Henrique Dubugra of Brex, and Kleiner Perkins. I hope that this show inspires you to start or triggers your chain reactions wherever you are in your entrepreneurial journey. Well, Bert, again, thank you for coming. It has been a pleasure to even eat California Burrito the first time I was in Bangalore. Great product.
Thank you.
How did you get the product to where it is? Because I know that you guys have literally had to plant trees. So there's a few elements of Mexican food that is just lacking in Indian food, right? You've mentioned salsa, guac, and what else do you think is not up to standard today?
Today, I think, if we said where we are not up to standard today, I think our corn, I think our lettuce, romaine lettuce is strangely hard to grow in India. And I haven't figured out why, because everything else people seem to grow pretty well.
Do you farm yourself?
We've tried, I mean, I don't personally do it, but we have people we do it with. Romaine, no one has cracked. So if anyone can crack it, I'd be
business idea already. 30 seconds in.
Romaine marketing here for my company. No, it's weird. Pretty much everything else is like beans have grown well, tomatillos have grown well. Chilies are very susceptible to diseases, but they've grown. And actually someone in Gujarat has figured out how to grow them properly. So poblanos and chili de arbol. And oddly enough, romaine is the one thing that we can't get grown properly. Now, I mean, corn is something very important to Mexican cuisine. These Mexican societies, civilizations were very, very into farming. And I think they almost invented many of these vegetables that people eat today. Corn, I think beans, tomatoes. I don't cite me on that, but the amount of kind of horticultural acumen is incredibly high. And, maybe that's, I'm not Mexican, obviously, but maybe there's some legacy of that I'm inspired by.
Did that make India an obvious bet that, it's very somewhere Mexican food or Mexican ingredients, there's an overlap with the Indian diet, right? Whether that's, I don't think most people in India are now vegetarians, but those that are, they depend on, say, the lentils and the kidney beans for their source of protein. So did that make it an obvious bet that, yes, a Mexican QSR, this will work?
I'm probably seeing a lot of Indians. Every fifth person in a Mexican store is like Indian, right? In a Mexican food
in the US, it's crazy, actually.
Yeah.
People are of two minds. Some people say that. The other people say it's too weird, that rice and roti is wrong, that it's because it's similar to Indian food, it's not aspirational. So I think there's two different camps. I was more it's more on the similar side camp. Mexican food is heavily non-vegetarian. Mm-hmm. So that's where it certainly diverges. But I think our thesis was that at least one dish would work well. So we said, rice bowls, tacos, nachos, salads, burritos, obviously. At least one would work.
So when you were starting out, did the decision to keep SKU count low in terms of the variations and how much you can play around with this, was that an instinctive decision? did that come over time?
I think there was always we didn't invent this restaurant format. There are many people who've been doing this for probably 50 years in the U.S. more than that even. So it's not that. I think there's beauty in a simple restaurant format. You can't be everything to everyone. So it's always better to be good at a few things. And I think that I appreciated that about the format. So I didn't think that we wanted to change the format dramatically. It's a good format.
What do you think California Burrito is best at?
I think for somebody who is healthy, we give a great balance of food. I think for somebody who wants to eat quick, we're fast. I think for somebody who misses the taste of Mexican food that you get in the US, we're the closest to that and getting closer day by day. And I think that's all under this, thought of value. It's good value. We don't have, our food costs are higher than most other fast food players.
You mentioned you're getting there, right? Closer and closer to Mexican. I'm wondering if you guys are still iterating on the product. And if so, how are we getting closer and closer?
I think there's plenty left to work on. I mentioned romaine lettuce is one thing, which honestly, we're not anywhere close on. The things that we're working on right now is scaling up beans. So we found that depending on where in India you grow Mexican or black beans, pinto beans or black beans, you get very different taste. So we've been testing different areas for over the past year and a half. And now we've come to a place where we understand that we're scaling that up. Corn is something where I think corn is almost the core of Mexican cuisine. And we're trying to grow corn that's good for what they would call table tortillas, which are soft corn tortillas. And then also for corn salsa, I think particularly in rice bowls or burritos, it's nice to have small, sweet grains of corn that pop, that give flavor pop, the crunchy ones. And generally in India, they have this American sweet corn that's very big kernels, which is decent. But there's some varieties like shoepeg that have very small kernels that are very sweet. And so we're trying to see if that one hasn't worked well, but we're trying to see if we get a variety of corn that would, add that pop of flavor to the food. So, in the past, we've worked on dairy. I think we've improved our cheese. Our sour cream got improved for all the stores. Cheese is running in some stores, and we'll scale up at a pace. But I think there's always new things to work on and improve. We're not at 100%.
I'm curious how you think about staffing. Because when I look at other QSRs, whether it's the Domino's, the KFCs, everything under Jubilant, I would imagine it's simpler because the concept of a pizza is more widespread and just more well-known than, say, putting together a burrito bowl. So how do you think about staffing and hiring, especially at your stores?
I would say a few things on that. We have a lot of prep at our stores. So there's the food gets cooked at the restaurants, which is, probably back in 2015 or 2016, we wanted to raise some capital. And so whenever you would pitch to somebody who's like an institutional investor or whatever it is, they'll say, this is not scalable because the food is cooked at the restaurant. And there's an element of truth to that, but that's also the feature of the model. It's fresh. So the inconsistency and the freshness, they go hand in hand to an extent. So then the idea is, given that there's some variability in the model, how do you bring enough, consistency that, we're having a good experience there? And I think we've always sought to have lower attrition. We have good training, and everyone has skin in the game. Our staff members have incentives that align at least their interests with the store doing well and the food being good.
How does the organizational structure look like? Assuming there's probably a business development side of things, and there's like how the stores actually work, right? So who is on the leadership team or the core team that's driving you guys forward?
Got it. Actually, just one other thing on the labor piece that was in my head. One thing that also is probably, it sounds counterintuitive. We try to have more staff in our stores.
Really?
Yeah. So because there's a lot of prep at the stores, it's much better for us that you want probably the marginal contribution of each person to be less. So it's better to have more people. A lot of people try to design a business model where you have like 3 staff in the store. I see this often gets franchised. Maybe there's 4 staff working in the store.
Does your bottom line not worry you then?
No, I mean not like not like from a foolishness perspective, but the aim has been to get the stores to a place where they can support enough staff, because in those situations where it's 3 or 4 people working, if one guy goes on leave, 30% of your team went away, which is really hard to manage, and then you have attrition. And food industry is notoriously high in attrition. Most brands would probably be at 90% annual or 100% annual. If you go to the US, I think it's like 130, 140% annualized attrition.
What does it look like for you?
We're at 60. So we have moderate attrition. I would say ours looks more like a cafe business than a fast food business. But these are things that help there be consistency in the operation by having enough people, by having well-paid people, incentivized people. And that's, I would say, been a big help for us in scaling.
And do you have those electronic kiosks in those stores
No,
to
we don't
order?
have those.
I've heard that for other fast food chains, that actually increases the average order value.
It well may, but it takes up space. And the beauty of our format is ordering the food yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Even here, honestly, it seems like a force fit, because all this technology is designed in the West to save labor costs. And in India,
it is the
not
labor
really a
costs
problem. And usually they have one person at the kiosk helping you order.
Yeah.
So, but it's probably more accurate. So the difference with us is we see what you ordered. So we don't have that accuracy gap.
I don't think Chipotle has those. No, they
don't have. But they've gone heavily into app. I think Kava has gone heavily into app.
Is that in the books?
At a scale, it makes sense. I don't think for us now it would make sense.
Do you think there's a pressure to do that because they're public companies?
No, I think it maintaining an app costs money, developing an app costs money. At some point, you have a big enough user base that the incremental sale justifies the app, the investment in the app.
Network effect, yeah.
And it costs money to get people to download apps. It's like, everyone tells me it's like very expensive to get people to download apps.
Too much ad spend.
Yeah, so this makes sense at scale. I don't know, maybe it's 200 stores, maybe it's 300 stores, maybe it's 400 stores. I don't know what it is, but at some point, maybe.
And as for food businesses, a lot of them start and grow as lifestyle businesses, right? Whereas, okay, they're profiting, everyone's happy, and that's it. So why is California Burrito more than that for you? Or is it?
I think for me, I like building. I think business is a way of learning. I like learning. So if I had other things I wanted to do, like let's say I was a very social person, then I want to go socialize. So then I should, business will have less time and I'll be socializing and enjoying. I'm more introverted. One of my investors told me he prefers introverted CEOs. Because
there you have it.
They're working more.
They won't be going
they're working more.
Yeah. So I think to me the fun is in the new problems, and then at scale it's more fun. Also, it's fun to have bigger budgets. It's fun to have problems where you can invest money at a big scale and see it work. Otherwise, at a smaller scale, it's like everything is not a do or die, but
it feels like that.
It feels like, especially if you want the company to be profitable, every decision is like, oh man, we have 10 rupees. Oh God. Which that's still there, but you can be slightly more risky in the decision. You're going to do things that are less tangible, or you can take more risk.
Around the investor bit, I remember in an interview you said, when you were raising your first round, you said something like, jargon threw us off our game. What was that experience like?
I remember when we were originally raising money in the US, we had connected with the owner of Vapiano. And Vapiano, a hugely successful restaurant business, he had just sold his stake for 9 figures probably. And he had then connected us to some banker. They were in a business together, I think, doing some investments. One of them was doing investments in India. And this was a finance guy. And we had approached him to learn. He was doing a brand in India at that time. And he told us, what's your CapEx? I didn't know what a CapEx was. And he looked at us like, wow, this is going to fail. Now, it actually turned out that their business wound up in India. But I think, having not done any business classes, I didn't know any of the shorthand. Maybe I buy equipment, it's okay, but that's capex. But I didn't know what the words were. People will speak in shorthand when they know a lot about things. Yeah, and when your business is making money, you'll know all the different terms.
And then, what was the pitch to them? Right? Was it hard convincing them of the thesis that yes, Mexican cuisine in India, QSR scale, it'll work?
I think look, we went to probably 30 people. It's like my piano teacher. Like my piano teacher, I think, put in $3,000. So I think it was like, there were some people who believed in us. There were some people who we met, and then they saw our blog, and then they believed in us. I think for, certainly our friends, our parents' network, there was enough individuals who had money that, we get 30 of them, and then we can have enough money to do the first few stores.
So that's interesting, right? Because a lot of people consciously want to stay away from raising anything from friends and family. They directly want to go to institutions. So was it because you went to friends and family because you didn't have a choice, or was it?
We didn't. We had no. First off, I don't know. Institutional investor, $200,000. It's not something that I don't know anyone who's. Maybe people are doing that, but we didn't know any institutional investors. Frankly, I didn't even know such a concept existed at that time. 21, 22. So I didn't even know such things were there. Right. It's like, oh, we need money. Okay, we'll
just get money somehow.
Yeah, someone else had a share agreement. We'll copy that.
Yeah. And you mentioned you're a builder at heart, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Have you not felt any distraction in these many years you've been building California Burrito, or any shiny object syndrome? Like, oh, maybe I could do that. Maybe that will move faster. Maybe that's cooler.
So what I would say is that maybe in the first 5 or 6 years, there was some question in my mind. It's like, oh, what would I do next? Not that what I'm doing is wrong, but then maybe this will come to an end at some point, and then there'll be a next. I think probably somewhere around 2018 or 19, I just thought, why think like this? There's no profit. There's no plan of exit. If you're exit, and then do the next thing. If you're doing this, be focused on this and don't think about what, any idea you have will be stale by the time you get around to doing it. So just focus on this. I've helped other friends with their businesses over the years. So that's been, something that keeps my mind more active. Everyone's businesses are different, and learning different skills by, you can look at the data and give some feedback, see what, you can learn things, I would say.
So you're fully focused, even right now, on continuing to build California Burrito and not really think much about what's next.
Not at all. No thought on what's next.
I think that's just for maybe especially when we're 20, it's always in our heads. Like, oh, what is the next thing we're going to do? How was your connection to Mexico or Mexican food actually built? Did you have a lot of Mexican food growing up?
I remember my favorite restaurant in where I grew up, Silver Spring, Maryland, was a Mexican restaurant. So we always used to go there for my birthday. Indian was my uncle liked taking us to Indian restaurants. We used to go, my parents would go to Mexican restaurants. But I would say really, I always loved the mission style burrito format. So whether it was Chipotle, who's the best in this format, or Moe's, I worked at Moe's, or Qdoba. I don't like unhealthy food, and sometimes you need to eat quickly. And so I really love the restaurant format. So I certainly love Mexican food, but I value having this format accessible. It's nice having something that's healthy, clean, quick, that's like easy to get and easy to find.
2 questions here. Why did your parents decide to retire in Mexico? And why did your mom make a lot of Indian food growing up?
I don't exactly know why they decided to retire in Mexico. I think they found a place they love called Todos Santos, which is outside of Cabo. And I think there's whales, and cost of living is reasonable. Quality of life is very good. So I think they like the beach and the sun. And maybe also there's an element of adventure. maybe that's somewhere there too. They haven't said that, but I would guess that could be a part of it.
Have you lived in Mexico?
I've never lived in Mexico. I've visited them. I mean, I've been to Mexico many times, but in fact, I would say probably on trips to Mexico is when I get very inspired that, wow, I have a lot more to do. Because it's damn good. You go and have stuff that's like damn good. And you're like, wow, I need to bring this to what we're doing. My mom was very into vegetarian food and very into healthy food. And I think for vegetarian eating that's healthy, Indian food is like the top. A lot of vegetables, doesn't have to be oily. I think, I was reading this guy who's become very popular, Brian Johnson, was also saying the same thing. My mom has always been into health. So she was in the Defense Department doing the health program for Navy SEALs, very into health, very into, I would say, different ways of thinking about health.
Also a marathon runner.
Very into competitive sports.
I actually didn't know that Indian veg food was considered healthy, because in general, I know that our diet is definitely not considered healthy.
Maybe not
like an average person.
I think it's the mix. So like the dals, the subjis, that part's the healthy part. The lots of rice and rotis and not the
all coupled together.
That part is probably the less healthy part.
Just to go back to the tactical bit, you mentioned delivery, so it stuck with me. It's been central to California Burrito, especially after COVID. Right?
Yeah.
How do you think about like the commissions that Zomatos and Swiggies of the world and the take rates and whatnot? Is it even sustainable anymore? Like at California Burrito scale, I imagine it is, but for a new restaurateur.
I think it's very punishing for new restaurants. I heard they charge 30% now for a new restaurant.
That is insane.
I think that's not good on their part. I think that eventually there'll probably be a third option, at which point they will have to change.
New business idea.
I think someone's already working on it. So that, there's been somebody who's disrupted the cab market very aggressively, done a great job. I could see them doing some stuff on food that would be very impactful.
The same team?
Huh?
The same team?
Rapido.
Yeah, the same, they're, okay. That's useful to know.
I don't know, but I don't think, it's hard for a new guy. New guy can't pay 30%. Obviously, he'll have to have much higher prices. Then it makes them uncompetitive. I think probably it's geared toward established brands. It's also better for Swiggy and Zomato to deal with established brands. We have people, we have people who can speak with them. We pay for ads. It's easier for their delivery guys, probably for routing purposes, to go to the same place.
But then someone just starting out right now, they want to build the next California Burrito, right? How do they do that, especially with delivery?
Well, I'm not going to help them with that. But I agree. I think it's very hard for somebody who's starting a restaurant to be delivery first.
Really? Okay.
You'd have to have some very great costing angle or quality angle. Quality, maybe if you have quality, you'll get a lower. If you have pricing, you'll get a lower commission.
Are there any food verticals you can think of that will be profitable on a delivery-only basis?
Yeah, gourmet. I think if you did gourmet stuff, then you can negotiate. Because let's say my average bill value is 800 rupees. What does Swiggy and Zomato want for me? Probably 70, 80, 90 rupees. Maybe new guy, maybe they'll charge 100 rupees. But that doesn't wind up becoming a big percent of sales. So they'll be able to negotiate. But if your average order value is like 300, 400 rupees.
What's California Burritos?
On delivery? I think it'd be about 380 rupees.
So that's
it's about 400 rupees now.
With packaging and all of that.
That's the average order value.
Oh, okay.
And on the side of ads, I believe you guys do a bit of ads on Zomato. And I don't know how this works, but do they also have a pixel that lets you retarget ads on other platforms?
They don't. So what they do, what they started doing is that they'll market your brand from their account on Meta. So they know who the users are, and they know who are the users who have not eaten from you.
Right. I wonder why they wouldn't give that data.
No, they don't give any data to us. So we don't get any. So I presume they do it for customer privacy. They don't want restaurants directing them to their own delivery channels. That could be something that if I'm a restaurant, I know who my Swiggy database is, and I can build my own competitor to Swiggy. So I probably that's the more reason than the customer privacy. But no,
I mean, they're not going to
share
siphon
data.
off their own business.
Yeah, why would I destroy my own business to help yours?
It's so interesting. It really feels like there's some gap open in the food delivery market in terms of making the restaurant side of things a bit happier.
I agree. I think that we'll see what happens. I think, no one. Maybe Uber would have been that, but they had all that drama with their founder leaving, and so they got out maybe too early. They probably would have been 3 if they had stuck.
Because you mentioned the Uber CEO, I have to say this. I think Dara recently in an interview said something like, the Indian customer, hardest to please.
Yes, I saw that as well. I was it's not that they're hardest to please. I think Indians are very keenly aware of the value of what they buy. And they want the best value. They want the best quality, and they want the lowest price for that. I salute them. I mean, Indians are very demanding consumers in that regard, and but that's why shouldn't people be?
Do you think that naturally keeps Indian businesses more on their toes, wanting to do more?
Yeah,
drive
for sure. I think people have to keep innovating on value. How do I provide? Probably, people benchmark pricing. People open 3 apps to book a ride. I mean, people Zomato, Swiggy. Where do I order from the same restaurant?
They check the prices as well. We compare them.
I don't think a U.S. consumer, most U.S. consumers, are going to do that. But I know people who are like earning crores who still do that.
That's crazy.
So I think that, that is a challenge for business, which is how do I create awesome value? And that's I think that's what, when he says that, that's what he's saying. And now what's happened? Rapido has come in and said, I can do the same, give the same product with 1/10 of the engineering cost. I'm going to pass most of that on to the driver and some of it on to the consumer. What's going to happen? I have all the supply now in the market.
And then how do you see something like ONDC in the mix and Namayatri?
Namayatri, I think it's the same model as Rapido. Yeah. I don't know who Rapido. I think was first, but I think it's the same model.
No, but how do you think about the government sort of coming into?
I think that I have no idea how that works out. Okay. But in food, I think it certainly won't work out. The reason is that there's no ownership on the delivery experience, and so the only people who will remain ordering there are people who want very steep discounts. And will tolerate deliveries taking an hour and a half, and with limited recourse. And no one at the end of the day owns the channel. The government facilitates the communication, but that's not, the problem wasn't communication. The problem was delivery experience. And Zomato and Swiggy are great operations businesses. I mean, this is a very operationally intensive business. So I think ONDC could work in other domains perhaps, but to me in food, it doesn't make any sense.
Going back to how is California Burrito's organization and operations actually structured?
We have a senior people in most departments, and all departments. All departments basically report to me. So there's a senior person in finance, operations, training reports to operations, maintenance reports to operations, senior person in supply chain, NPD reports to supply chain. Projects is big. We have probably 9 people in projects. And then there's HR, business development, and marketing. And so all those people report to me. Many of the people have been there a long time. Makes my life easier.
You've been able to keep them.
Yeah, I think, look, if somebody's scaling with the company, why shouldn't they do well and have skin in the game? And
so you're not shy to give away skin in the game, right?
No, obviously someone should prove their loyalty first. It's not on day one it's going to happen. But if someone's loyal and good at their work and scaling, yeah.
And I know that you mentioned you're pretty open for like having random chats. But at the same time, how does one try to land a more senior role at California Burrito? Like how should they approach it in a way that gets your attention and makes you give them that interview?
Honestly speaking, it would depend on the role, but most roles if it's for someone reporting to me. Are you saying for reporting to me or just generally?
Let's say reporting to you, like a more senior role.
I mean, if they're reporting to me, I will screen every resume that applies. Mm-hmm. which can be time consuming. And maybe I shouldn't be doing that, but I do. For, let's say it's a social media role, then they should clearly be good at social media. But I think there's no real shortcut. We post a job, people apply, we screen them based on their resume. We're very open on the resume screening. So we're not like only this company, this experience, whatever.
College degree a mandate?
No. I mean, depends on the role. But like if we're hiring an assistant finance manager, they probably need to be a CA. So not that there's zero criteria, but I think how we do it is we try to be broad on the resume piece. The interviews would be quick. We go for more quick interviews. And then only if there's red flags, then they're out of the process. It's like, I may not get to know you in 10 minutes or 15 minutes, but I at least can ask you a few questions that make me answer, I don't want that person.
What would be some red flags in a 15-minute screening?
Look, I think we just got around to deciding our core values as a company, which
After
we
13
thought
years.
was kind of corporate-y, but at the end of the day, we thought, okay, these are things that we care about. One was open and honest. So, if a candidate, I shouldn't tell people what to do in interviews.
No,
it's fine.
Better.
If open and honest is your culture, then you want straightforward people. I like people in interviews who are straightforward about what they like, what they don't like. If they're very polite, very diplomatic, if they can't give a straight answer, not going to work out. And a lot of people are very polite. If I ask them, what did you not like about working at this company? No, it was a great company. But you left it after a year. Something must have been not totally working, or at least one thing we can say that, my boss messaged me on weekends. I don't know, whatever. That, inability to be straightforward, I would not be interested in, because I want people who are very straight with me. Another one is growing every day. That's a core value. And that to me means, there's somebody who is, trying to improve things. That's pretty hard to tell from an interview.
Yeah, I would assume. How do you know if they're developing in their own lives?
But sometimes I would ask, somebody what they, what's good about themselves, what's good about their work. Can they give a thoughtful critique? If we can give a thoughtful critique, it's that would indicate that you're curious. You're kind of, instead of just selling. If someone's in a sales mode, I wouldn't go for that.
Have you ever had a candidate apply through unorthodox methods, right? Perhaps just reach out to you directly and something that actually worked.
No, I don't entertain those. I would reply and say, please apply through LinkedIn. If it's for an internship, I'll send it to HR. But if it's for only for social media role, that I would then interview them, because I don't want people.
You wouldn't want a finance role to reach out to you externally. Perhaps,
I don't really want any role other than a social media role to reach out to me directly.
Why is that? Why is that? Why is
no, we have
media
a process. There's a whole process.
So why social media in particular?
No, any email, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Even LinkedIn message, I'll reply, but I'm not going to give an interview, because there's a process. Thousands of people apply for roles. There's a process. We look at all the resumes.
Would you mind me asking what happened with the co-founders?
Co-founders, so I started with two. And so Galen was an actor, and Galen had a promising acting career. I think his father did not like the idea of him being a part of this project. And he was occupied shooting a TV show for really the first 10 months of the entire journey here. He was here for about a year. In the year of 2013, he was here, maybe a year and 3 months. But it wasn't a right fit for him. I always say now, if you don't like Indian food, don't start a business in India.
You don't last.
You won't last.
And then
he didn't like Indian food.
It's gone. And what about the second one then?
Dharam was he was here for the first year. He got very frustrated. He left. for a year. And then he
Why did he get frustrated?
It was very, the first year was very tough. It was very, like disheartening in many ways, because you're not used to failure. You're not used to things not going the way you want them to. And so I think building that muscle where failure, whatever, I move on, you have to build that muscle to an extent. But he came back after a year.
He came back.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he was here probably for the first 10 months, went back for a year and a half, then came back.
And is he still working?
No. He left in COVID. So he moved back to the US. He got married, and we had kind of planned his exit.
And his marriage he didn't find a girl here.
He married an Indian girl.
He married an Indian
girl.
Yeah. Do we have any plans for Bert?
Huh?
Do we have any plans for Bert?
There's no comment on, but I'm sure sooner than later.
Sooner than later.
Very interesting.
And do they still have ownership in California Burrito?
They do have some. Yeah.
Separate note, Ajay Kaul, who used to run Jubilant, Domino's is India's parent, once called you an American Marwari for how frugal you are. When you're building a VC-backed QSR that's supposed to scale fast because, VC expectations, how do you balance that instinct to be scrappy, but also the pressure to grow big and grow fast? I imagine.
We are not VC-backed.
Okay. So it's just angels?
I don't even, this kind of, I would say family office. We haven't raised much capital. I should say relative to kind of what the norm would be. The journeys are in conflict. So I think by raising high growth capital, the priority is growth. Now, can growth and profitability both be objectives? They can, but there will be compromise. Growing costs money because you make mistakes when you grow. Now, making money requires kind of slowing down a bit because you want to make less mistakes.
So you always preferred that?
We have always been on that side of the scale. But I think food business is not inherently a great business to go fast in. But that being said, some people it's the right fit. So I think in India, particularly, food is probably not the right. Like maybe if we had a cookie brand in the US, maybe we can go quick.
No crumble cookies?
They've scaled up quite a bit.
Exactly.
It's not a great, the hyper growth capital in India for food is not a great fit.
But do you think it works better for software?
I think if it doesn't involve physical real estate and lots of labor and perishable products, no problem. And even for some people in the space, I think like Luckin Coffee in China with their own problems, but they certainly scale up very quickly. So it's not to say that it can't be done, but it's just generally not the right thing.
How's progress on the Pune and Mumbai branches?
So we're opening in Pune in May. Mumbai, we took a vote in the company. It was between Pune and Mumbai, and we voted for Pune.
I live there.
Huh?
I live there.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So we'll be there very soon. I think end of May, we'll be opening our first store, but I think we signed 5 stores there now. And then Mumbai we'll do the year after.
Okay. And when Pune are you guys opening again?
Where in Pune? We're opening in there's Phoenix Mall, the Millennium, Nexus West End Mall. We just signed something in Bobdon. We're looking at something at FC Road, Aero Mall. Those are kind of the 3.
Interesting. And is there any sort of go-to-market strategy at new cities? Or is it just carrying on the reputation from the other cities? Like, you guys already know, and some people have probably traveled to the other cities and tried you guys out over here. And so is there any strategy to launch?
We've learned over the years that tech parks are bad to launch in.
And that was the first.
Well, that is the thing.
Right,
so the first thing we did in Bangalore was tech park.
Yeah.
It did well. So then get tech park, you do first. We tried that 2 other times and it doesn't work.
Where did you try that?
We had actually opened in Chennai in 2014, and which was a silly decision. But tech parks in Bangalore are different than tech parks in the rest of India. And even Embassy Golf Links is a unique tech park. So what we learned in Hyderabad is that mall is a beautiful place to open first. And so Chennai we did mall first. Pune will be mall first.
And I remember you mentioning that it's good to get good at one food format first. food formats in the sense there are malls, there are airports, there are deliveries, and actually independent stores. Where do you think California Burrito shines the most? And I'm assuming airports haven't really worked out, right?
So we've done 2 airport stores. One did well, but we lost the bid. They had a bid. Airports are phenomenally expensive. The second one we did is in Hyderabad, and it opened about 3 weeks before COVID. So I think it opened like Feb 20th, 2020.
Yeah.
You can't hold that against you.
No, look, the store was fine. It would have been fine.
Mm.
That airport had its own problems. They're doing a lot of renovation downstairs in Hyderabad. So when we let the lease run out, it was like a 3-year lease. We finished the lease and we vacated. I don't know if this format is an airport format.
Yeah, because it's heavier, it's on light, and
the thing that occurred to me is I'd gone back to the US and I was in Dulles Airport in DC, and Chipotle had closed there. I said, that's not good. They do very well. So, and then I realized Chipotle has like 3 airport stores across the US. They have like 3,500 stores, very few airport stores. And you don't really see burrito formats in airports in the US.
So 3 stores across 52 states?
I believe it's something like that. It's like insanely small.
I guess there's a reason for that then.
Yeah. So then that was like, that made me think, okay, maybe it's just not a natural fit. Caffeine in airports.
So where do you guys shine the most?
Malls do well. Standalones have done well. Tech parks was kind of our bread and butter pre-COVID. I think the format has flexibility. It's just not a transit format. And it may even be in India, but we're just putting that on pause. We're not going to bother with that because a lot of headache.
And if you were to start California Burrito again in any other country, because I think a lot of countries in Southeast Asia perhaps don't have the best Mexican food, and I think there's a disconnect as well. Where would you start, or would you not have the answer to this, perhaps?
I think, people have come and said, let's do franchising in Dubai. Let's do Thailand. Somebody come from Nepal. India is a huge place.
It is.
I think the lessons you learn doing business in India, they may be applicable outside India, but I don't know if they are. And so I keep learning things in India. I should get good at India. Trying to do another country. I mean, I guess I could.
You could bring on a partner, perhaps, in that sense.
Could, but I mean, we only have 100 stores.
Yeah.
This damn worry you?
I haven't really thought about it because it's just the notion of having to go and figure it out. Maybe I'm too hands-on in that sense, which is to say that, fine, maybe I should empower someone in Dubai to do a franchise. But then if it doesn't go well, then you have to go figure it out. I mean, I remember Ola had opened in London. It just sounded like whatever they learned about the cab business. I knew the guy who was running their London piece. It just sounded like very different. Your UK cab business was very different than the India cab business. And so I think that to me, the strategy is, be good at this, be good at it here. The day that I could say if I have no more work to do on my business here, then that day I can go for another country. But till that day, I'll be here. And
you also mentioned that a lot of your friends after college were going to like Italy or Spain. And you chose India because you wanted something unique, right? In a way. Were there any other contenders? There were probably contenders in my mind. But when I looked at where study abroad programs were, there weren't any study abroad programs in those places. I don't even really remember, but Mongolia was something certainly I was kind of curious about. That would be crazy. Just kind of somewhere radically different. And I did have someone actually in my fraternity who had also studied in Hyderabad. And that hearing about his experience also made me feel that India was the right place to come.
And then why Jaipur first?
Jaipur, it just worked out scheduling wise. There was only 2 programs, I think, in India at that time, which was Jaipur and Hyderabad. And Hyderabad was short and it just worked out. The first 6 years over here of business was figuring out business or the culture in India. What were your biggest realizations? There's certainly to be many realizations. I think the first was that getting frustrated is a poor strategy. Not that it really works anywhere, but maybe if in the US, if you raise your voice, you get your way. I don't think raising your voice gets you anywhere here. You know, it's
Too many people.
People don't take well to it. They don't, for whatever reason. So I think, learning that being frustrated gets you nowhere. Being patient is a much better approach. I think, realization was that I did feel betrayed with the first person who had, created problems for us. So probably I always had an eye over my back after that, which is not a realization, but certainly it's an orientation, which is, how kind of careful are you? How much trust do you put in people? I trust people a lot, but I also know that things may not always be as they seem. I think another thing was that India is a place where you need a lot of different talents to succeed. There is opportunities for people to shine in ways that they wouldn't be able to in the U.S. I think, given it's such a social place, people run on relationships a lot here, and so there will be some people who, with their gift of gab certainly can work anywhere. But I think in India there's different gifts of gab, and there's so many different talents that can be recognized and cultivated that in a more systematic environment wouldn't be noticed. In fact, may be punished, because sometimes these talents are probably negatively correlate with being systematic.
When you were starting out, so there's this maze of bureaucracy, right? Especially when you're setting up a business in this country. Sure. How did you navigate that, especially as,
And also right before that, actually, what was that betrayal like? The first betrayal? What happened there?
Oh gosh, with our man. No, I mean, look, he was effective, and he was like making my life very easy. Which maybe people should also get suspicious that someone's making their life too easy. Maybe not. But he was making my life very easy. And so I probably wasn't looking at closely at things as I should. Okay. He was making money his own ways.
He left to start a competing burrito.
He did. He started his own competing burrito restaurant.
Is that open?
No,
what happened?
It's closed. These shortcuts never get you anywhere. I mean, that's the other thing, is there's no get rich quick scheme.
Do you believe in the concept of karma?
Yes, I do, but maybe from a more technical point of view. But certainly, building things on shaky foundations never leads to them standing for long.
The technical version of karma.
Yeah, basically. It's a more technical view, but it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah. Did you? Another thing is that the first few years, they were probably incredibly difficult. Your co-founders had to leave in a way. What kept you going? Because that must be so disheartening in a way too, right? How did you keep going?
I think an entrepreneur has to be a bit delusional in their self-belief of what they can achieve. And it can't, you build up kind of muscle of disappointment. You get used to things being a bit disappointing. And the more things that you do that don't work out, the more you can just move on to the next thing. Which I think certainly was the case for me. There's setbacks. Every setback becomes less of a impactful setback. You get used to it, and then you work your way through it, and then you say, okay, I know how to do this. I can do this.
Do you have any support system? Because again, you're in a foreign country.
No, I'm certainly somewhat, delusional in that in that sense, which probably every entrepreneur is. Most businesses fail. So if you don't have that radical self-belief, call it radical self-belief, call it delusion, call it whatever you want, no one would get up in the morning to do anything. So somewhere, we have, our brains allow us to do that, to just keep on going. Otherwise, things would.
If you would have failed, what would you do next? Or is that something?
Never thought about it.
Never thought about it.
Never.
That's the delusion,
Well,
there's no failing.
I think the other thing is that despite the frustration of the first 10 months, the actual restaurant did very well. So we also, maybe the other way of thinking about this is that, setbacks occur, you build some muscle. But when you taste a bit of success, you also then realize that there's hope at the end of the tunnel. And I think Peter Thiel had spoken of this, of people say the PayPal mafia. Now, did PayPal have the absolute best people there? Maybe not. Maybe they were. Maybe they weren't. Maybe instead they just saw what it meant to do it right. And once you see it and have that conviction, you know where to go next. And so I think having an early taste of success also balances that kind of setback muscle.
Did you work out back then?
I've been through phases, but not back then. We were like in Ejipura and a PG.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of gyms around.
And as for marketing stuff, right? What were some really good campaigns that worked? And on that note, I've also heard that you guys don't do really well on Indian holidays.
But that is also true. Look, marketing is something we were certainly late in the game to get started on. Probably really COVID is when we started doing marketing.
Why was that? Just
we have
money.
You have to, they say sales solves everything. And there was no way to cut our way out of COVID. We had to grow our way out of COVID. And how do you grow? You have to invest in marketing. Which was silly that we didn't do it before. It was a stupid thing. Once you start investing in marketing, you see it works. Again, you get some confidence, and then and by the way, going from 0.5% to 3% on marketing has an impact. Going from 5 to 8%, I don't know if there's as much impact. So campaigns that have worked for us, I think certainly promoting tacos has done very well. I think kind of focusing on snacks has done well. But I think, somewhere in COVID also, we saw that people were starting to do like Mexican food nights. The orders would be more of like a quesadilla, a nachos, a burrito, not rice bowls, which a lot of working professionals eat rice bowls. And so, creating something where a family can come in and have a family Mexican evening out together certainly was something that happened. Indian holidays.
What happened? Because I would, before actually listening to that part, right, I was like, normally don't people just order more on holidays? I would have never thought that you guys.
So, in food business, the way people like to look at it is by occasions. I think in other businesses, they look at demographics, age, income, gender, whatever. Food, the way I've been told by senior publicly traded food company CEOs, is occasions. And there might be an occasion of a quick meal, or there might be an occasion of a family, whatever. There might be a Netflix and chill occasion. So people order food basis their need state. Now, an Indian holiday is an Indian celebratory occasion. And Mexican food does not have a role to play for most people in that occasion. And so, Indian food, what are holidays about in India? Sharing, it's by sweets. Often they'll be vegetarian. So there's, things that are not core to what we are. And so Indian brands do phenomenally. I mean, Diwali, you'll have businesses that do 8x a normal month sales in Diwali. But Mexican food is not that.
On another note, have you ever faced any racism here?
I would say no.
Really? Like in all these years?
No, I mean, look, people will use words that are racist. If someone's very frustrated, they might say something mean, with some, white this and gore that or whatever. I know it's not from a place of, I think it's tricky. If you don't have a substantial number of the minority in the country, it's probably hard for people to really even develop a stereotype. I think, primarily racism is driven by stereotypes, and you need enough data, data points to find. Some people might judge on one, but also probably the type of people, Caucasians coming to India from the U.S. are generally going to be. It's kind of like Indians going to the U.S. The top, the Indians are the top earning ethnic group in the U.S. So, are people racist against Indians in the U.S.? Sure, yeah. At the same time, the Indians most people know they probably like to an extent. And I think that probably for me here, people probably don't know what to even make of it. They don't know. There's not enough white people to make a stereotype, and whatever is said is in a moment of hurt. It's not like they actually would. If I applied to a job at their company, they discriminate.
Yeah. And have you ever faced any corruption while scaling?
I mean, yeah, sure, but corruption is. We have to be careful what we say about here, because this is something that's not, But I would say that the role the Indian government plays in the community and the different political organizations play in the community, doesn't stop us from doing business. But I think even our experiences have not been so dramatic. I know other people have had more dramatic experiences. At the same time, the people who've had dramatic corruption experiences that I know about, also maybe their approach was very aggressive and not so right. If you're coming to India to do business and you have a very antagonistic approach, maybe that could compound things negatively. So I think we've always tried to be, peace-loving, good neighbors, adjusting to whatever and
Local.
Not that doesn't mean that we're here, so we have to do business.
Do you think there's a right and a wrong?
I won't get into right and wrong. There's a way things are, and I'm not.
It
here,
is what
I'm
it
not
is.
here to.
More like
I said, let India be India.
Yeah.
I'm not here to change.
Can you actually elaborate on that? I think that became that stuck with a few people. I would say, let India be India.
Indians have a way. Obviously, I'm being very generalizing here.
That's okay.
But there is an Indian culture, and I'm not here to try and change people how they speak, how they celebrate, how they communicate. Their timings. People don't give as much value to being prompt here usually. Okay, fine, so be it. I also won't scold somebody if they, I won't hold my standard of timeliness.
Do you think that's a cultural thing?
I think it's probably a bit of a cultural thing, yeah. Now, whether is it something that changes? India's been, frankly, quite socialist as a country for a long period of time. As capitalism comes in, does that change? Maybe a bit. But I think, Indians are not always people who like the systematic approach as much. They like to have some freedom. I don't want to only drive down the road with the lanes, the inside the lane. I want to go over here and there. And I'm not here to make a comment on that. It is what it is. And if I get frustrated by things that are different than where I grew up, then I'll never survive.
If you were to go back now with all of these years that you lived here, if you were to go back to America, do you have any sort of advantages you think you'd go back with?
I don't know. I always wonder if the lessons that I learned, getting better and better at business in India are applicable in the US. I don't know. I hope they are, because it would be good if something is useful in multiple places.
I'm wondering here, because a lot of Indians that, I'm assuming it's also because of the population, right? That the top 0.1% that do end up going there, they do really well in business because, Indian Americans are the top earning group. So I wonder, would the reverse actually also help you out somehow?
I don't know. I do feel when I go back that sometimes I am like a fish out of water. I'm so used to things here now. When I go there, there's certain etiquette. Again, it's kind of etiquettes. So there'd be certain etiquettes that people would have in the US. There's also etiquettes in India. They're just different etiquettes. And once you're adjusted to one etiquette, then you start to make faux pas when you go to the other place.
22-year-old Bert's watching this, trying to get California Burrito off the ground. You want to say something to him?
He doesn't. You're like, no, don't start another California Burrito. But assuming in another country, right? Hypothetically.
I think that if I look back at what I thought when I was 22, the high-level thinking was very right. I think the high-level, what was the high-level thinking? One was, being in India would be like an ultimate learning journey. Two, India is a fast-growing place. it can't hurt to be in business there. Probably a good idea to be in business there. A cuisine that can work. That's probably like the high level thoughts, and they're all right. They were all right. So when I look back at, what I was thinking when I chose to do this, was I would agree with it now today. There's nothing that was grossly off, which is good, because then when you make when I think of major life decisions, I have validation. Yeah. Whatever I was thinking then was very directionally correct, and then now I have future life decisions, major life decisions. I at least trust my decision making.
Yeah. And would you do anything differently?
That's always a tricky one. Because you don't really know until it's all over, right? You don't really know if the thing you learned or the mistake you made, it's very hard to keep score. I think I'm here for the journey. I'm not here to keep score on a regret or I should have done this differently. I think it's just, if you point the ship in the right direction and generally make good decisions, the journey is good.
Thank you, Bert.
My pleasure.
It has been a pleasure having you. I think that's pretty much a good way to end this.
Great. Well, thank you for having me.